who is the most powerful person in Iran? It's possible that people who don't know would say the president or maybe even the parliament. But for more than 3 decades, the real power belonged to one man, Ali Khamenei. From 1989 until his death on February 28, 2026, he served as Iran's supreme leader, the highest authority in the country's political system. But understanding Khamenei requires understanding something bigger. How Iran's government actually works. Iran holds elections. It has a president. It even has a parliament. But none of them hold the ultimate power in the country. That authority belongs to the supreme leader, a position that was held by one man, Ali Khamenei. In this video, we'll explore 2 things: who Ali Khamenei was, and how Iran's unusual political system works. Hi, this is Olivia's History Zone. Here, I analyze geopolitics, history, and just anything else that I find interesting. As a reminder, I make mistakes. So, if I do, please respectfully indicate if I did so in the comments. Also, consider liking and subscribing. Just as a heads up, this is the 2nd video that I have done covering Iran on this channel. If you have not done so, you can check out the first video using the link in the description. Now, on with the video. Ali Khamenei was born on April 19, 1939 to parents Javad Khamenei, a low-ranking Shiite cleric, and his second wife Khadija Mirdamadi in the northeastern city of Mashhad, one of Iran's holiest places. Khamenei grew up in a poor, modest household. The family of 8 lived in a tiny, cramped 2-room house. Later in life, Ali Khamenei often described his childhood diet as consisting of little more than bread and raisins. His family was very religious, and from the age of 4, Khamenei studied the Quran and later Shiite Islamic theology, eventually attending religious schools in the city of Qom, known as a center of Shiite scholarship in Iran. During the 1960s and 1970s, Iran was ruled by Mohammad Reza Shah, who pursued rapid modernization and close ties with Western powers, particularly the United States. Many Iranians, however, opposed his rule. Some objected to the culture of corruption and authoritarianism that plagued the Shah's reign. Others believed that the Shah was abandoning Islamic traditions by having such close ties to the, as many perceived it, godless West. Among these critics was a religious scholar named Ruhollah Khomeini, a high-ranking cleric known as an Ayatollah. Khamenei became one of Khomeini's supporters and participated in protests against the monarchy. Because of this, he was arrested multiple times by the Shah's secret police, the Savak. Then, in January 1979, the monarchy collapsed during the Iranian Revolution. Khomeini returned from exile, and Iran became the Islamic Republic of Iran, a state combining theocratic policies and democracy. Khamenei quickly rose to the ranks of the new Islamic government. In 1981, Khamenei survived an assassination attempt that severely injured his arm. Later that same year, he became president of Iran, serving 2 terms from 1981 to 1989. However, the presidency of Iran was not the most powerful position. The real authority belonged to Ayatollah Khomeini, who held the title of Supreme Leader. When Khomeini died in 1989, Iran faced a major conundrum. Who would replace him? Surprisingly, the answer came in the form of Ali Khamenei. Even though he was not one of the most senior clerics, Iran's leadership selected him as the country's 2nd supreme leader. Once in office, Khamenei gradually expanded the power of the office of the supreme leader, becoming the central figure in Iranian politics for almost 4 decades. To understand Khamenei's power, it is important that you first understand Iran's political structure. Now, I did talk a bit about it in my previous Iran video, but this is a more expanded explanation. Iran's system is based on a concept called Velayat-e-Faqih, meaning rule of the Islamic jurist. Put simply, this means that a senior Islamic scholar should have ultimate authority over the state. And at the top of this system is the supreme leader, the most powerful figure in Iran. He controls the military, the judiciary, the state media, and key political institutions. He also appoints many powerful officials, including the head of the judiciary and members of important councils. Below the supreme leader are several major institutions. First is the president of Iran. The president is elected by voters and manages the day-to-day administration of the government. But unlike in many countries, such as the United States, the president does not control the military or foreign policy entirely. Those areas ultimately answer to the supreme leader. Next is Iran's parliament, called the Majlis. Members of parliament are elected by the public. They pass laws, approve budgets, and debate policy. However, there exists another body that can override them, the Guardian Council, which has 12 members, half of which are directly appointed by the supreme leader. The other half are nominated by the judiciary and approved by Parliament. This council reviews all laws passed by Parliament and can reject them if they conflict with Islamic law or the Constitution. The Guardian Council also screens electoral candidates, meaning it decides who is allowed to run for office. Because of this, critics and democracy watchdogs argue that the system heavily favors candidates loyal to the ruling establishment. And finally, there is the Assembly of Experts. This body of clerics has the power to select and remove the supreme leader. In theory, it's meant to serve as a check on the leader's authority. In practice, however, its members are also vetted by the Guardian Council, meaning that the system basically reinforces itself. During his nearly 4-decade tenure as supreme leader, Khamenei shaped Iran's domestic and foreign policies. One of the most important institutions under his rule was the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRGC. Originally formed after the Islamic Revolution to defend the new regime, the IRGC grew into one of the most powerful organizations in Iran. It controls major military forces and has significant influence in Iran's economy and politics. Under Khamenei, Iran also pursued a controversial and highly criticized nuclear program, which led to years of international sanctions and diplomatic entanglements. In 2015, Iran did reach an agreement with world powers known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA. But tensions continue to remain high between Iran and Western countries. Domestically, Khamenei's rule faced several waves of protests. Some were sparked by contested presidential elections, economic conditions, or social restrictions. Khamenei's supporters viewed him as a defender of Iran's independence and Islamic identity. Critics, however, accused his governments of suppressing political opposition and limiting personal freedoms. While Ali Khamenei held immense political authority, his leadership was also surrounded by controversies involving wealth, corruption, and Iran's regional activities. One of the most discussed issues was the enormous economic network tied to the office of the supreme leader. Investigations by international journalists found that Khamenei controlled a powerful organization known as Setad, formerly called the Headquarters for Executing the Order of the Imam. This organization oversees vast holdings in real estate, corporate investments, and financial assets across Iran. A major Reuters investigation concluded that Setad controlled assets worth tens of billions of dollars, giving the supreme leader access to economic resources largely outside the normal state budget and beyond parliamentary oversight. Much of this wealth reportedly came from property seizures carried out after the 1979 revolution. According to the investigations, Setad usually took control of properties belonging to Iranians living abroad or members of religious minorities by declaring them abandoned in court proceedings. Critics argue that this system created an enormous financial empire directly linked to the Supreme Leader office, while supporters of the government often describe these institutions as charitable foundations intended to redistribute wealth or manage confiscated assets after the revolution. Another major controversy surrounding Iran during Khamenei's leadership involved the country's relationships with armed groups across the Middle East. Western governments and several international organizations have accused Iran of supporting militant groups such as Hezbollah, as well as armed organizations in Iraq, Syria, and Yemen. Iranian officials, however, have described these relationships as support for resistance movements, opposing foreign intervention, and Israeli influence in the region. Because the supreme leader ultimately controls Iran's military and foreign policy, many analysts view Khamenei as a key architect of this regional strategy. Finally, there were also debates about the wealth of Iran's ruling elites. Some analysts and political opponents claimed that networks tied to the leadership controlled vast fortunes spread across multiple sectors of the Iranian economy. Other researchers caution that estimating the personal wealth of the Iranian leadership is both very difficult and unreliable, because many assets belong to state-controlled foundations rather than individuals. What is clear, though, is that under Khamenei, Iran developed a power structure where political authority, economic institutions, and security forces became deeply interconnected. This system helped consolidate the power of the supreme leader and allowed Khamenei to remain one of the most influential figures in modern Middle Eastern history. For nearly 4 decades, Ali Khamenei stood at the center of power in Iran, shaping its politics, foreign policy, and ideological direction. But on February 28, 2026, that era abruptly ended when Israeli airstrikes struck Iranian leadership targets in Tehran, killing the supreme leader. Though he has been replaced by his son, Mojtaba Khamenei, his death now marks one of the most dramatic turning points in modern Middle Eastern history, and leaves the future of Iran and the Islamic Republic uncertain. Thank you for watching. If you found this video helpful and or insightful, like, subscribe, and leave a comment on your thoughts below. I'll continue covering political and geopolitical issues with depth, context, and clarity.